Okay, well, we're at the end of the semester pretty much. This is week 16, and this chapter doesn't even have a number on it. It's supposed to be chapter like, I don't know, 15 or something. But as you probably read, it's a very, very short chapter, and it provides kind of a summary of what it is that we've read through the entire year and or semester, and provides kind of like a summary of maybe the good pros and the cons of this computer mediated communications. In essence, the whole social media world, and I'll just say that the field of social media is becoming very, very crowded. There's all kinds of choices that you can make. Many of them are run by some of the large tech companies, and I think, as a lot of the issue around data, the use of the data that we've all provided these companies is really what they are aiming to get in order to monetize the platform. So there's a lot of debate on protection of your privacy, protection of your data, really kind of the architecture of some of these applications. Facebook being one example where it's kind of like almost like a closed environment. You have to be in Facebook before you can see what people are posting. So there's a very interesting development around how people are not only using social media, but what are the pros and what are the cons, and what is the future of this. Not to mention that it's getting even more complex because of the introduction of AI and the proliferation of things like bots and other kind of like machine tools that are used to communicate. And so how does that enter into the dialogue, and how does that enter into how you all sort of interact with this technology? So that's an evolving thing. Maybe by next fall when I teach the class, it'll be a whole new kind of environment. This year has already been kind of an interesting experience, given all the AI tools that you can have at your disposal. And how does that kind of impact, the ability to really interact, make connections, build communities, and in essence, kind of like get your message out there. So it'll be an interesting field to continue to watch, and I will definitely be learning along the way as we go through the next year, and maybe I'll share some insights as I uncover them in fall 2026. But let's go ahead and share this screen, and I'll go ahead and kind of go over this final chapter. Okay, can you see that? Computer mediated, it says approaches and perspectives, conclusions and implications. So let's start off with kind of like the benefits, right? The benefits, and I've been on social media for a good number of years, and I'll admit, in the beginning it was pretty much kind of all of this, right? It was access to information, you got the emotional, social support. What really kind of compelled me, and this was like, back in the day when you had things like MySpace and Friendster, it was a new experience to actually have the ability to connect with your friends and actually, um, you know, build profiles and groups and interact, with friends that you previously didn't have that ability to do, except for maybe calling them up on the phone or something. Does any of you remember? Probably not. You remember something called Orkut, ORKUT, Orkut? That was like that was Google's attempt at a social media platform. And then Google also had something called I think it was Google Plus. Anyway, those kind of fell to the wayside, and then left pretty much the whole environment open to Facebook. And what Facebook was really good at doing was, you could connect with your friends, but it really, I think, excelled in the notification. They were able to notify you that your friend responded to something, or you got some kind of some indication that they saw your post or they saw your picture or whatever. And so that was, that's kind of that emotional support, right? You see your friends on it, you connected with your friends, you get responses, and that was the stickiness and some of the what I would refer to as the element of attention. You get some attention, so you want to go back and you want to check it out. So that's kind of like how it started. You have these positive interactions, diverse relationships. You have the ability to connect not only locally but anywhere. And it was kind of cool where I remember, you'd go to a conference, maybe do a talk, and then you'd tell people, if you have any comments or suggestions or feedback, just hashtag the name of the conference and that session. And then you could go back to Twitter, and then you could pull up responses, and you could feel like there was a whole community that was starting to form around something that you did. And it might be, at a conference somewhere else on the continent. So these were benefits that were not only easily realized, but they were benefits that helped to create this sort of stickiness. And then buffer stress, as when you can connect with others in a fairly low barrier, you didn't even have to pick up the phone. All you do is turn your computer on and go to a website and connect with somebody. It's a pretty stressless action that you just took. And then of course there's the online dating kind of websites, online companionship, intimacy. Those are some of the, I would say, kind of early benefits of social media. And then of course as time went on, there's the human nature, the honeymoon period kind of ended. And this is probably for the 2000, maybe after 2015 around, you got comparisons. It became clear that people were only posting the best of what it is that they wanted to present, and understandably, and it had an impact on a lot of people comparing themselves, to some of the folks that they were associating with, and this was a symptom of kind of comparison, especially with young girls. I remember going on PBS Hawaii talking about social media, and it was a good crew of people that were there. And one of the things that they had brought up on this particular episode of Insights was how a lot of young women have been affected by some of the things that they see on social media. and it could be comparing themselves to others and not feeling satisfied about their appearance. So those are, have these negative effects. You have these photos, you have sort of this poor body image, it could result in eating disorders, depression, and these are all pretty well documented. Harmful material spreads quickly. So, and we see that quite often now, where whatever platform you want to refer to, the stuff that really gets a lot of attention are the things that could reflect on violence and sort of the negative aspects of human nature. There's a I think it's an Instagram page. I think it's like H&L News or something like that, H&L News, and pretty much all they post are people getting into fights. It's pretty crazy, but it is kind of like you see it, you watch it, it's like you kind of want to watch it because you want to see what happens, right? But it is one of those things that it sort of draws you in there. You don't even know what these people are fighting about, but it does sort of grab your eyeballs and then kind of yanks you in. And then you have these unwanted content facilitated by the platform algorithm. So, like if you were to see any of this and you watch it pretty much to its conclusion, the algorithm will determine and kind of put into kind of your sort of like profile that you are interested in those kinds of videos, and then will consequently, show you those more often. So, I'm sure many of you have sort of tested this out. If there's videos that you want to see, you watch them. If you don't want to see them, then you gotta have to scroll through them pretty quick. I have my, the ones that I tend to like to watch. I mean, I watch the car crashes and all that kind of stuff, so I get those. But there'll be the rescue animal videos, and the ones that have puppies and animals, and those are always kind of heartwarming. So the algorithm knows that's kind of stuff I like to watch, so it'll feed me that, right? But it'll feed me the other stuff too because I watch it anyway. And then the concern then is on the extreme. You have self-harm, suicide, risk-taking challenges, and that I remember seeing some, I think it might have been TikTok videos where there's some challenge that's going on that people try to do, and then it starts to spread, and ends up somebody getting hurt as a result of taking that challenge. And I find those somewhat entertaining, but it is kind of like I definitely think it probably affects the algorithm. But people will be kind of stupid that way, and keep perpetuating those kinds of challenges, and actually having people actually participate in those challenges. So you have concerns, continued you have social media for corporate for-profit companies, and as this says, and you guys all know, profit is earned in two ways: eyeballs to the advertisers. The algorithm keeps users personalized information, and then it'll feed you supposedly news from social media, but nowadays it's pretty challenging to figure out, okay, so what is trusted news sources and what aren't. And my recommendation for that is, watch them, look at who's sharing, do a little research on who that person might be. take it for what it's worth. Try to compare it to others that might be sharing some insight, and then don't just settle for one or two news sources. Try to hear what's coming from a variety of different sources, and make a determination there. It is going to be more and more complex as we move forward. There's just going to be more and more of this coming at you. So I think for everybody, you have to devise ways that you can discern what is real and what isn't. Yeah, and then part of it might be just leaving it to time. Time will tell. Time will tell what starts to actually gain any kind of traction. There's so much news going on about some of these current events, like let's say Venezuela as an example. There's a lot of news media that are pushing on getting the video from the second boat, the survivors that was shot down, released. For us, I guess we just gotta wait and see what happens with that, and see what kind of traction it gets from, whether it's the media, whether it's the courts. Where does any of this start to really impact the legality of any of this? So some of it will be, time will tell. The Venezuela is a good example of that, as well as things like the Epstein files. We're gonna have to just wait to see how that all plays out. And then this other sort of mode of making money by selling personal data. So we as users of these platforms, there's a sense of loss of control over the personal information. And so you have Google, social media, cell phone apps, so much information that's being used. That's part of why I wanted to share with you some of the work that's going on with, Internet Governance Forum and other discussions, even with things like AI governance. I'll admit I'm a pretty big Google user. How does that impact us as we, move forward? And you all need to kind of weigh the pros and cons of whether you continue to use a platform because it benefits you, or if you choose not to, then you have to kind of hold firm on your choice and philosophy, and decide on which platforms are beneficial to you, and hold to your principles. So, these addictive and compulsive behaviors, you have addictive, compulsive, 2 to 20% of users. People are usually unable to stop social media, smartphone use. We all realize that, it can be an addiction. I have seen, a lot of folks, just if you look at random people using their smartphones, it's pretty much heads down using whatever platform they're most interested in. I will admit that, I probably spend a little bit more time on places like TikTok than I would on, watching regular broadcast television. To me, it's sort of entertaining, and I guess it's kind of my way of let's say winding down a day where I'm getting a certain amount of information via the regular broadcast news, but it's always kind of interesting to me to see what other comments are being made about some of these current events via the For You page on TikTok. So anyway, that's my kind of use, and I wouldn't say it's addictive, but it is something that I do on a fairly regular basis. And I'm sure you folks all have your stories about what, to what extent you guys use your uh, um, favorite platforms. So algorithms make compulsive use more likely. And again, these algorithms are the ones that feed you stuff, content on your For You page. You have negative psychological, relational consequences, perhaps lower self-esteem, fewer interaction with friends. You know, uh, interacting on any of these platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X, whatever, uh, it does serve sort of an information need, but I still find it very satisfying to actually call people up and talk to them on the phone. And I think that kind of goes back to the idea of, what is real and what isn't real. And I think that goes back to some of the, some of the things that we started this course off talking about, which is comparing things to the real face-to-face interaction. And to me, that is of great value. So I would definitely recommend that, you don't necessarily stop using the computer mediated stuff, but don't stop calling people up or meeting with people and interacting on a person-to-person basis, because I think the human connection is very valuable. This whole thing about cyberbullying, I think you see it on the news all the time, being done by people of the highest levels of government, bullying people, whether it's cyberbullying or bullying them face to face. It's these aggressive acts toward a victim, being disparaging in front of an audience. These are all examples that are happening, as we speak. Other aggression include hacking into emails. That's it almost sounds a little minor compared to some of the cyberbullying or face-to-face bullying that's going on. Prevalence, you got 5 to 23% in North America, in China, 61% in younger populations. Yeah, it's definitely happening, across the age groups. Many of the victims are women, racial, ethnic minorities, LGBTQ plus youth, and definitely linked to anxiety, depression, suicide. I do notice a lot more recently of the group XG, and I think it's Kokoda is his name. Anyway, that's a really kind of interesting phenomena that's going on right now with a very, very popular girl group XG, and one of the members really boldly coming out and kind of like claiming they're non-binary, what do you call it? It's not a sex, it's just a non-binary position. And lots of credit, to them as a result of being so bold and so honest, in a very, very visible and very popular, girl group. And that's been coming up in my feed. And I think that person has really taken her or his position and publicly come out and laid claim to it. And I think lots of credit to them for being that brave. Mental health concerns. You have mental health, self-esteem, anxiety, depression. Social media worsens the self-esteem, disordered eating. So again, a lot of times these environments are gonna tend to reinforce these kinds of conditions, and unless you have a way to really get yourself out of a cycle that could spiral out of control, I think that's where you a lot of times you need to remove yourself from these kind of platforms and get into more of a face-to-face and human-to-human kind of connection to relieve some of this anxiety and loneliness and depression, that might result. So I guess this example of the 4-week social media deactivation, I think that's, there may be some merit to that if you are able to find the space to kind of clear your mind. That's a healthy thing to do. And as we go into the holidays, I would definitely think that's not a bad thing to do. Sort of just take a break. Now I'm saying that, but there probably will not be a day that I will not take a 100% break from looking at my smartphone. But I do definitely, spend time around the yard and, connecting with the Aina. I think those are all very important things to readjust to, find affirmation, in those kinds of environments. So social connection, staying in touch with friends and family, that's obvious. Connection to community, similar identities, information, self-expression, develop friendships and social connections, share stories, seek advice, important for marginalized groups, political information, social change advocacy, all important. And again, I can speak firsthand that these are very important, and these continue to help inform sort of the direction that I take. But I will reinforce this with the fact that you got to stay connected to the real stuff. And to me, the real stuff is interacting face-to-face, one-on-one, and human-to-human. And that's, don't forget any of that. So artificial intelligence, this is going to change quite a bit, because I think this whole chatbot support and the ability for AI to become more and more kind of intuitive about what it is that you're asking for is just going to get better. But at the same time, we have to be aware of that. And how do we make sure that it's not sort of overtaking our sort of sense of self-worth and consciousness? So, when it started, the chatbots were kind of awkward, unacceptable. They needed a lot of sort of data to become better, and I think they have come a lot better. In fact, I think you can pretty much program or specify ChatGPT to respond, in a certain way, and I think that's only going to improve. Humans are more socially attractive than chatbots. Yeah, that's true. But the chatbots are becoming better. Chatbots, the rapport, the sharing concerns, possibility for AI chatbot mental health support. So again, this area is really open for a lot of development. And I think over the course of just a short time that we've been, doing the class, and within the course of, just the next year, we're going to see a lot of improvements. And, it might be interesting to actually have a guest speaker, and the guest speaker be, a chat GPT or something. I was actually contemplating doing that on one of my radio shows, but yeah, I just thought it'd be, I don't know, might be a little bit enabling the chatbot to have a platform, and I didn't necessarily care to do that, as opposed to having a real person, right, be my guest on a radio program, or even as a guest speaker for this class. So I didn't want to give it that much, sort of airtime. And social media for social change, easier access to elected officials. I will say that, in terms of getting access to elected officials, it has gotten quite a bit better. If you're getting into some of the process of perhaps policy work, or introducing a bill, or interacting during the session, which is going to be coming up in January. The Capitol website is a really good one to do a lot of this on. You can go to capitol.hawaii.gov, and many of the committees and the actual hearings are all televised and streamed on Zoom and their corresponding YouTube pages. So very easy to access. But I will say that all the legislators really appreciate people dropping in on their, at their office, or making an appointment to see them face to face. And I think legislators do want to interact with, their constituents. So even though you can use the platforms to access, it's still good to actually, make it a point to get out there and meet your legislator, whether it's at the Capitol or at a town hall. And then, the CMCs, enable you to discuss, organize, activate social issues. And there's a lot of examples, Me Too movement, the Occupy Democrats, you name it. It's quite a robust field, if you want to track various activities that are going on from a social change and political standpoint. And then finally, this slide sort of kind of captures a lot of it. You got the technology, you got the relationships, you got the social practices, all in this area called computer-mediated communications. And like I said, the technology is only getting more, not only complex, but it's proliferating. And I think that this semester, the book, I think, did a good job of covering some of the human aspect of interacting on these technologies, and it's just good to remember the human aspect of what it is that you're giving into when using these platforms, and also just make sure that you maintain your humanity on the platforms as well as off the platforms. And don't be a contributor to the negative aspects of these technologies. There's enough negativity going on in this world, and I think it's always good to have good intentions. As we use these technologies, it's there's no lack of the need for good intentions. So with that, I will kind of conclude this chapter lecture. There isn't a quiz on this chapter because, again, it's just a summary, but it is a good overview of, you know, how to look at this technology and how to really, you know, use it as a tool, use it with, you know, the full awareness of what it is that it could have as an impact on you, and then, you know, proceed with eyes wide open. So with that, I want to open it up to any questions that you might have about the book. And again, thank you all for being a part of, you know, COM350.
Will we be having class on Thursday as well?
Yeah, so on Thursday is our last kind of like guest speaker class, and I'm trying to get somebody to talk a little bit about a report that came out called the News Desert. And so, yeah, there's somebody's going to come on and talk about Hele Imua, which is a program to, if any of you are interested in doing any kind of internships, Hele Imua is a good resource for you all to consider. And then I'm going to be tapping one of my contacts for this News Desert, because I think for all of you as comm majors, understanding the news environment is a good thing, given the fact that, you know, news is really a really important resource, you know, for us to make decisions on. But as news and trusted news sources become harder and harder to find, you know, what are we going to do to replace that, or what's going to fill the void? And, you know, you're seeing some of the void be filled by some of the CMC platforms, but, you know, the question of trusted sources is always going to come up. So this study just came out. They did a launch about a month ago, and so I'm going to try to bring somebody in and talk a little bit about it. So that'll be the last, you know, sort of speaker survey, and then I'll have, you know, some questions for you to answer. But, you know, and that one, yeah, you know, I would encourage, given the fact that next week is finals week, once we have the speaker lecture, to try to complete it as quickly as you can, because it's only going to be same like before, right? 5 questions, and the sooner you can get that out of the way, the better. And then you can concentrate on your finals, you know, next week, and then you don't have to worry about, oh, did I do all my speaker surveys and all that. So, yeah, you can look forward to that on Thursday.
We don't have any final for this class, correct?
Right. No. So this is it. So the class is all basically graded on the quizzes, which is the multiple choice and the true and false, and then the speaker surveys. And then, you know, I have a couple points that I'm gonna, you know, distribute, but it's not gonna be like major grade changers in terms of attendance and all that kind of stuff. So I think for the most part, I'll probably have all the graded materials done by the end of this week, except the speaker survey. So depending on when the speaker surveys come in, I'll pretty much have everybody's grade. But you guys can pretty much figure out what your grades are, because if you've been doing okay with the quizzes and you're doing okay with the speaker surveys, you know, that'll be pretty reflective.
And you said chapter 14 was the last quizzes for this class? Okay.
Yep. Anything else? Well, if not, I will let you guys go a little bit early, and then I'll see you all back here on Thursday And until then, best of luck in all your classes. And if you have any questions, just shoot me an email.
Real
Thank
quick
you.
before you before you go,
Yeah.
I checked. I think it was like 2 days ago, and my quizzes only went to chapter 13. I'll double check and make sure that I'm not crazy or anything. But if I don't see chapter 14, can I just email you?
Chapter 14 is up. I just checked it, and it should be on, the Cognilla site.
Okay. I just remember I was on there like yesterday and like going through some stuff, making sure I'm getting everything done. And I remember it going to 13. Um, but I'll double check. It could be a fault on my end.
Okay. Okay.
But I'll email you if anything changes.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right.